I spoke with the internationally renowned Chair of Urban Warfare Studies at the Modern War Institute, John Spencer. In mainstream media outlets, Israel has been accused of deliberately targeting both aid workers in Lebanon and journalists in Gaza. Have you seen any evidence of this?
Absolutely not. And that's just, to me, a continuation of the disinformation about all the operations. The fact that the United States has said many times that there is not one bit of evidence to show that Israel has targeted civilians, period. Journalists, aid workers, there has been accidents, but the fact that Israel has done more to prevent and to safeguard civilians and those on the battlefield. But this is war. Israel is being attacked. Israel is conducting massive operations. I don't think people understand the scale, even in the north, where Israel has now deployed 5 divisions. Israel doesn't have 5 divisions. It has 2 divisions. So those are Israelis who are trying to get, in the north, Hezbollah to stop raining rockets down on Israel. And then you have Gaza, where Hamas is still launching rockets. So I think that's just more of the disinformation, everything from the fact that there is no genocide, there is no targeting of civilians. There's actually the opposite. It's like a weird counterfactuals when Israel sends hundreds of trucks in daily, does these evacuations, then gets accused of doing something wrong when it's like this tiny nation under attack from all these different directions who is actually doing everything anybody's ever tried in war to prevent civilian harm, to get them out of harm's way. But yeah, this is war.
You were in Gaza, I believe, earlier this year. What about the figure of 40,000 civilians killed in Gaza? Is that figure, as far as you're concerned, is it accurate? And how do you compare the civilian casualties in Gaza with other wars?
Sure. And I've been to Gaza 3 times since October 7th. I was last there in July. I can tell you that the now Hamas Gaza Health Ministry number of 42,000 killed in Gaza is a lie. It's just not true. There's no way you could know the number, but that number itself isn't those that have been killed. That's anybody who has died since October 7th. It includes anybody who died of natural causes, anybody who died by Hamas's hand, who murder, to include just this week, people trying to flee when they get the notices. It includes anybody who's missing. They just don't know the name. It includes people that died years ago. I can tell you from being on the ground that that number is a lie, and that Israel is actually the civilian to combatant ratio, if we knew the number. Although in Gaza, there's some type of magic system that can tell you how many civilians died. It can't tell you how many combatants died, but they'll tell you how many civilians died within hours. That's never happened in war, and it never will. But they'll tell you within hours, and then mass media runs with it, like 30 killed, 500 killed. But that number it's a lie. It's not true. Israel's civilian to combatant ratio is actually lower because they say, and I believe them more than I believe Hamas, but even if I take both numbers, Israel's actually killed like 20 to 22,000 Hamas. And then the rest are what is believed to be civilians, but there actually is no way to tell that. And when you have this reporting system that is just full of lies.
In terms of the international community accusing Israel of breaching international law, in your view, has Israel been guilty of war crimes?
Absolutely not. And I've written that from every angle, every accusation, from the fact that Israel has not been discriminate. It has not been indiscriminate. It has been very discriminate in who it targets, the enemy, only the enemy. It has not been excessive in the use of force. It has not been overwhelming, as in not what the law of war says. In my analysis, to include being on the ground and going with like the actual units on the ground, they're following the law of war, following rules of engagement that are very stringent against the complexity of this enemy in underground cities that nobody else has also faced in war. No, Israel is going beyond the legal requirements and is following their moral, ethical way militaries fight and doing everything to prevent civilian harm. So all of it, the starvation is not true. All of it it's all a farce of lies.
John, what's your comment on the United Nations, both from the positions expressed from its senior leadership, but also that pro-Hamas resolution that was put forward that had majority support in the United Nations General Assembly? Do you think the UN has become an enabler for terrorism?
Absolutely. We didn't get here. And I think that's what we're seeing, especially in northern Israel, where the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701 and the mandate of UNIFIL of over 18,000 United Nations forces that we, members of the United Nations, pay for, who have completely allowed the entire area to be combat areas for Hezbollah, massive bunkers and stockpiles. The UN is failing. This has been the greatest test of the United Nations since the end of World War II, and it's failing with the Islamic regime in Iran, with all of these proxies, with the way it determines what the law of war is, how it's been co-opted by humanitarian rights groups, how it's become just a political theater, basically. It's really problematic when this is the organization that's supposed to prevent war, and it has gotten us to the situation where we are now, and we need leadership.
The United States is sending a THAAD battery missile defense system to Israel, yet at the same time it's issued a letter threatening to withhold weapons if the situation doesn't improve in Gaza. What message do these conflicting messages send to Iran?
I mean, I think so for Iran. I mean, I think we are in an election season. War is politics. I think that's a huge sign of the strong relationship and the ironclad agreements, and that I'm proud of as an American, that the United States will defend Israel, especially from attacks from another nation state like Iran. So the sending of this very advanced air defense system that will integrate with other defense systems there is a very big sign to Iran to not continue to attack Israel and the ironclad relationship, because that comes with American soldiers, a part of that air defense system. It's not the first time it's happened, but it's a huge step. And I think opposed to this letter, which is, you need to do more about humanitarian aid, it's a giant sign of the actual ironclad relationship between the United States and Israel, as Israel is fighting a 7-front war, which includes drones, missiles, ballistic missiles from 7 different directions, to be honest.
John Spencer, thank you very much for your time. And that was my interview with John Spencer earlier. He is so impressive.